Blue Gold, our 18-hole Nicklaus design, award-winning golf course and clubhouse will leave you green with envy. We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
Hello and welcome to Real Talk with myself, Anele on SABC3. The stage is yours. So earlier this week, Trevor Gumbi and his wife Lucille spoke about their decision to divorce amicably, but for some women and men, leaving the dinner table when love is no longer being served can be difficult and sometimes to their detriment. In a society where women are meant to be loved and cherished, honored, they cheated on, emotionally and physically abused, and sadly killed by the very men who are meant to love and protect them. Today on Real Talk, we look at toxic masculinities and how this leads to toxic relationships. We're also challenging toxic notions of manhood. Joining me right now is author and motivational speaker Kofi Ofori-Boateng. No stranger to the show. He's here to talk about how to make the man in your life serve you. Based on his book, Notes to My Sister, Let Him Serve You. Welcome back, Kofi.
Yeah, Anele, it's good to be back.
I'm so glad to finally talk to you like this now, because I want to talk about this book, because every time we're talking about something else, which, I mean, is always important. Let me not act like I'm being blasé about it, but I've wanted to decipher your mind around why you wrote this book.
Okay.
So obviously you have to sit down and be like, I am writing a book.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, what initially happened was I started writing a blog piece, and then it kind of spilled out into a bit more. I'd been at a talk where we're talking about marriage, divorce, and relationships. And
why did you go to the talk?
I was invited by a friend of mine, Tabang Mashiho. She was hosting it, and I was one of the speakers. So something that I picked up on was a lot of pain from women. And I think the main theme for me was a lot of women who didn't really value themselves or understand that they are supposed to serve, or rather be served, just as much as they serve. So after the talk, a couple of days later, I just found myself spilling my thoughts onto a page, and it became more than a page, and then it became a couple of pages, chapters, and a book.
And then a book. So what if I say to you, okay, what a romantic notion, you know, to be served when at this moment in time, we're just trying to stay alive, okay? We're trying to not be raped, we're trying to not be burnt and killed, and you really taking it all the way to, I'd say, to the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow where we are being served. What would you say if I say that to you?
Well, why not? Sometimes we have to be a little extreme to break out of certain ruts. So that's the one thing. And then secondly, it's not really romantic at all. When you look at what love actually means, that's what I'm breaking down in the book. So things like patience, kindness, respect, long-suffering, temperance, these are the qualities a man is supposed to display towards his woman anyway. There's nothing romantic about it. This is how you're supposed to behave as a human being.
The bare minimum.
It's the bare minimum. This is what makes you a decent human being. Now, if you can do that for yourself, you can definitely do that for another person.
So in the book, because there's one book that annoys me to no end, and it's so popular and it's sold like millions of copies around the world.
Yeah.
Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
Act like what? Think like a man, act like a lady, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I'm just like, Steve, really, you are a man and I am a woman. How is a man telling a woman how to act and think and whatever?
I think sometimes it's good for us to give you guys our perspectives. Because when I talk to a lot of women, I pick up that there's a huge disconnect between what they understand a man to want versus what the reality is. So, for example, you tell a woman that he actually loves you just the way you are, and then she'll respond with, no, actually, he loves what he sees on the Cosmo cover. Really? Did you have the conversation with him?
Yeah.
Is that what he told you? No, that's what you men want anyway. So it's a generalization. But have you actually spoken to him? And a lot of the times, he has tried to show you that this is how I want to love you. But she keeps going back to the cookie cutter
of like, you know, what this DNA that we've been fed of what a perfect woman is.
What a perfect woman is, what a perfect relationship looks like, and so on.
So when you say let a man serve you, what serve? What are you referring to? Are we going biblical sense, like in terms of like, you know, wash your feet, bring out the oils,
breakfast in bed.
You know what I'm saying?
Like a lot of people just defaulted straight there, but it's just basically serving you as a being. So when we enter into relationship with each other, the premise is that you're bringing something, I'm bringing something. Now, as you're bringing something, it's not necessarily just tangible things. It's not necessarily just money, a home, and the like. You're also bringing certain gifts. You may be in my life to teach me how to be more patient. You may be in my life to teach me how to be a little more consistent. You may be in my life to teach me how to be a little more selfless. And I'm also here to teach you certain things. I'm here to teach you how to stand up for yourself, for example. I'm here to teach you to trust your instinct. I'm here to teach you to be more authentic, because the authentic you, the real you, is what we've actually been waiting for and we want to see. So in the book, I break it down into different chapters. Some of the chapters that talk about how he should serve your body, how he should serve your potential, how he should serve your spirit, all these different aspects of who you are.
So now, here's something I've always like battled with, and I don't think I've ever voiced it, so I think it's the perfect time.
Okay.
I find there's this notion that that it's the only thing that's perpetuated about women in relationships, that we're always looking to get into relationships, and that men are running as fast as they can, and you know, I happen to catch him and then hold him down for long enough. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think of that? And you're a man, you tell us. Are you guys looking to get into relationships? Is it something where you sit down and like, I actually want to get into a relationship where, because it's always like the onus is on us, like we're the ones who want to be in relationships.
I think that also boils down to socialization. So women tend to be more driven, all right? Do
you know what's amazing? Like, do you know what's amazing? As I'm watching his face, he's so careful to pick his words.
Yeah, I have to.
He's like, because I don't want to offend you ladies.
Well, actually, I'm not even like too concerned about, you know, offending, because the truth does offend people from time to time.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just I'm very circumspect with my words.
Okay.
But women tend to be more driven to enter a relationship because for a lot of women, it's more of a societal thing.
Yes.
And then for guys, when we get into a relationship, it's about, I'm ready for this. Now, the difference is, because women are more social, as much as they want that relationship, a lot of the time, that is the goal in itself. It's not necessarily let's build within the relationship, or let's find the right person to build this relationship with. It's more a case of, I need, so I got it, man. Oh shoot, girl, now you know it's my time too. So for a lot of guys, that's something that they experience. And as much as we want to get into a relationship, a lot of guys have been hurt before because they got into a relationship with someone who just wanted to have a boyfriend at the time who was not ready.
Necessarily want to be with them.
With them. So he ticks the right boxes. You guys look cute together. He treats me nice. He opens doors for me. Great. Yeah, but do you love him? Anybody, like, you know, like, he opens doors, he buys me flowers. Like, I'm good. So a lot of guys have been in that situation. They've been hurt. And once we've been hurt a couple of times, it's very hard for us to go back. Women tend to be a whole lot more resilient than we are when it comes to that. And that's why it may seem like we don't want the relationship. We want the relationship, but once we've been hurt one time too many, it's very difficult for us to find the strength and find the courage to go back.
I'm glad, you see now everything you've said has basically laid the foundation of what today is about, because we're discussing toxic relationships and toxic masculinities, right?
Yeah.
And I think everything you've said is ultimately the foundation.
All right.
And then you know, this is what's happened, and then you come and then you want to try build on something when the foundation's messed up.
Yeah.
So here we go. Kofi's book, Notes to my sister, let him serve you, has been described as the balancing between submission and servanthood. When we return from the break, we'll unpack further what this submission and servanthood entails in a modern day relationship. Stay with us. We remind women of their value and worth in a relationship, how to take up that powerful position in a relationship, and the dignity to walk away when it no longer serves you. Kofi Ofori-Boateng's book, Notes to My Sister, Let Him Serve You, offers insight into how men can serve women in 12 specific areas in their life. 12, okay? But in the age of toxic masculinities and toxic notions of manhood, how can men serve women? How can men rather serve their women? My first question is, can we get to a place where men understand that you can provide without being the breadwinner? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's where the toxic originates from, is that, you know, he's taught to be strong and be a man and, you know, put food on the table and make decisions, and there must be a house and there must be cars. Yeah. And to them, I think that is the only way men have been taught to provide. Yeah. Am I right?
Well, for a lot of men, yes.
Okay.
This to a large extent is a societal, it's a cultural, and it's a traditional issue. So depending on the kind of culture or tradition you were raised in, you may be, your identity or your worth or your value as a man may be linked to what you're able to provide, tangible things. A lot of the time you hear of a guy who says he loves a woman, and the first question that is asked, and rightly so, is, yeah, but what are you bringing to the table? Now, if we're talking about love, that's not really a big deal. You know, he can get away with just bringing love to the table. But when you're talking about marriage, for example, there's certain responsibilities that need to be met. So it makes sense to ask those kinds of questions. But I think the emphasis a lot of the time is more on that than the other aspects as well. So it's more, bring that to the table and you're covered. You don't necessarily have to show her respect because you have a paycheck. You don't necessarily have to serve her because, you know,
you are bringing money.
You're the breadwinner.
Yeah.
You know, she needs to respect that and she needs to toe the line, kind of thing. Then on the other hand, you have guys who were raised in homes where they were taught, you know what, it's more than just the material thing. It's also who you are as a person. Are you a leader? And perhaps more specifically, are you a servant leader? If you are, then sometimes that is more than enough. Again, not all two relationships are the same. You may go into a relationship where she earns more than you, or you may not even be employed, but you're a source of strength, support, encouragement. You give her ideas. You may be supporting her business, supporting
taking care of the kids.
Taking care of, like, there are so many roles you can play. However, that does not mean that you should neglect your let me call it your creative side as well, where you're able to create something as a man and bring that to the table as well, either for yourself or for your kids, as an example of how a man can also be creative and productive. That's the critical thing, I think.
Okay, if that's the genesis then of the you know, the I don't want to say problem, but I'm going to say problem. I can't find any other words right now. If that's the genesis of the problems with men in the terms that they haven't been taught to provide in any other way besides a financial way, do you explore in your book the genesis then with the problem with women is the fact that we are raised to validate ourselves through relationships? Because I think if we're going to go back and want to fix everything at grassroots level, the first thing I'd want to teach my little girl, if I ever had one, is you actually don't need to be in a relationship. Like, it's cool if you are, but you don't need to be in one yet. Every story you're fed as a kid, there's always a man there.
Yes.
You know, would that be the problem?
It's, I think it contributes. Okay. The problem can't really be just distilled down to one thing. There's so many aspects to it, like there's so many facets to it. And for women specifically, the way this plays out, especially in the home, is she's told from a young age, we can't wait to see the nkonyana you bring home, for example. Then she reaches a certain age and it's like, okay, fine, well, you're not married yet, so how about you just give us
a child?
A child. And then she does that, and then she's judged for having a child
without a man.
So, you know, like there's so many complexities within that, within society itself, that you start understanding that, you know, both parties are really getting the short end of the stick when it comes to education, on valuing themselves.
And
expectations as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what in your book do you think rubs people up the wrong way? Because I have one.
Oh, okay.
But go answer.
I think a lot of people get rubbed up the wrong way before they read it, and after they read it, they're like, oh, okay, all right, cool, we get what you're saying. For a lot of guys, they think what I'm saying emasculates them and disrespects them. You're saying there's no way on earth you're going to tell me to go, you know, to go prostrate before my woman and, you know, serve food to her. It's just not going to happen. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just manning up. And unfortunately, for a lot of guys, manning up means being domineering. And here we're saying, no, but actually real strength means just standing up. If you can just stand up and carry your load, you know, and carry it in a way that is respectful and dignified, you won't have the issues you're having. But a lot of the time, you want to come and dictate to her who she should be, you know, what the relationship should be, you know, and that's neither fair nor respectful.
Okay, so when you said when people read your book, then they understand it, because looking at the title, it's like, you know, what is he saying? So there's something you wrote in the book, and when you said it, I was like, what is he saying? And I'm keen for you to kind of further explain it. You said, men are created to understand systems, logics, and women are created to understand people and relationships and emotion. Okay, hey, do you not see the, like, it's 2017, are we not, like, floor crossing?
No. We're floor crossing in a major way, but once again, when we talk about, if we talk about our wiring, all right, that's how guys are wired. Hence, books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, you know, gain such huge popularity. We're wired differently. It does not mean that we're not capable of floor crossing. We can floor cross, but our natural defaults are like that. In the book, I also talk about energies. I talk about a masculine energy, a feminine energy, and a balanced energy. So you get some women who do have
a
masculine energy. So
do you think that can be taught? Is that taught or like picked up along the way, or you just born like that?
I believe you're born like that. You know, that's a part of your personality. That's a part of who you are. But then you learn how to relate within that personality with other people, and you learn how to adapt and communicate with other people. Now, with that said, being a man with a higher degree of feminine energy does not necessarily mean you're less of a man. Being a woman with a higher degree of masculine energy does not mean that you're less of a woman. And I think that's where a lot of people run into a lot of difficulty when it comes to gender roles and gender stereotypes. Because, no, you're a woman, so you shouldn't be doing this. But if your natural default is to take charge, then you need a man who understands that and who allows you to take charge. He can lead from behind. Now he's serving you in that way.
And finally, the book makes sense. Listen, Kofi's book for the woman is for the woman who has forgotten her value and worth in a relationship, marriage, in life in general. It's for the woman who has settled for far less than she deserves. If you're interested to find out more about the key areas men can serve you, you can get yourself a copy of Kofi's book. So what I did there, copy of Kofi's book. We say goodbye to Kofi for now. He'll be back a little bit later in the show. When we return from the break, you'll hear from a man who lost his sister in the hands of a man who was not only meant to love and serve her, but also to protect her. Stay with us. Hello. 1999, Valencia Farmer was 14 years old when she was brutally gang raped and murdered, and she was stabbed 53 times. And in Boyson was gang raped and disemboweled in 2013. Less than a month later, Oscar Pistorius shot and killed his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp through a closed toilet door. And in May this year, Karabo Mokoena became the latest face of South Africa's gender-based violence epidemic. She was killed and her body burned beyond recognition by her ex-boyfriend. These are the high-profile cases that we learn about in the media, but there are many more untold stories that never see the light of day, such as Ndlela, who lost his sister 2 years ago when her boyfriend shot her before turning the gun on himself. He joins us now to tell us the story of his sister. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being brave enough to tell us the story. I'm pretty sure that it hurts.
Yeah, trust me, it does. It does.
So, when your sister and this guy were dating, would you say that you saw any signs where, you know, as a brother, because ideally brothers don't want us to date anyone. If brothers had it their way, we would never date.
Yeah,
but
that's
I mean,
true.
so taking away the natural protectiveness of a brother, did you see any signs?
I didn't, trust me, I didn't. And after this whole thing happened, then I started hearing stories of things that happened before she was murdered. So it kind of broke me. But then there was nothing I can do when, I mean, you can't involve yourself into other people's issues, your relationships and stuff. It's their relationship, not mine. So there was nothing I could do. I could only respect my sister for the decision that she took by being involved with the guy. Yeah, so.
What kind of stories were you hearing?
I heard that he was abusive towards her. Even on my wedding day, they had a normal couple fight, but I didn't know about it. Maybe people were trying to protect me from hearing such things on my wedding day. He even took her car. So my relatives and other people, they had to go and fetch the car from him. So such things, you know. So, but then I didn't know anything. I think maybe she knew that I would react, maybe in a bad way. So she was trying to protect the relationship or the guy. So
You said something earlier that, and I feel like we in Gesinti we say into
exactly.
You know, in hindsight now, is that something that you still prescribe to, where you like you leave relationships alone, or if you could, would you step in now, knowing that it would end this badly?
If I could, I would. I mean, I work in the police, so we get to see these things almost every day, you know. But then when it happens to your family member, it hits you where it hurts most. You kind of get used to the situation because you work with cases every day. But then when it's part of your family member, I mean, it hurts a lot. It's like something totally new. Yeah, so if I could, definitely I would.
Your house got broken into
A week before.
A week before
Yeah.
she was killed.
Yes.
What was stolen?
Nothing.
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 So is that coincidence? You don't think it was him looking for a gun so that he could shoot your sister?
Actually, that's what came to mind. Immediately when I realized that nothing was taken, I mean, I work in the police, so people have that mentality that I probably have a firearm. Even my brother is in the army, so
Yeah.
I think somebody thought, okay, they might have a firearm. So first thing that came to mind is like, nothing was taken, so therefore the person was looking for a firearm. So it kind of made sense immediately when I heard that she was murdered. Because when I arrived at the scene, they asked me if I was brave enough to walk in. I had no choice. I'm the only brother, I'm the only elder from the same house that she had. So I had to walk in and see for myself. I had to identify her anyway. I'm the family member who was there. So immediately when I saw the scene, then it clicked. My house was broken into a week before, and I sort of remembered that the person was kind of looking for a firearm. I mean, there were valuable things that the person could easily take, put in a pocket and just walk out, but nothing was taken. So that's the only logic that came to mind then. Yeah.
So you're not here under the umbrella of being a policeman. You're here to tell us about your sister.
Yes.
But you are a policeman, so I need to ask you this. In many cases, people will go and report a husband beating them up, a boyfriend, whatever, and the first thing you'll be told is, guys, you know, just go home and sort this out amongst yourselves. Don't press charges just yet. You know, go think about it now. Like from where you are now, right, with what happened to your sister, does your approach change when a woman comes in to report a crime against her like that?
It doesn't really change. I mean, at the end of the day, you are at work. You're supposed to approach things in a professional manner. Another thing is when you are serving the people who are coming to complain, you cannot encourage people to break up or to end things. You cannot, you should not. You always advise people to sort things out, think through, and when you reach a conclusion, then you can come and lay charges or complain or whatever. If things get worse, then that's where the police come in. Police only get involved, more especially when there's physical fight. You understand? Then the
But it is physical if he beats me up.
Yeah, it is. That's where the cops come in. I mean, you cannot allow somebody to assault somebody else and then just let it go like that. You can't. So that's where the cops come in. But then you always advise, think about it before you can lay a charge. Because most of the time, even after the person has been beaten, the next morning the person will come and say, "We've sorted things out, I want to drop charges." It happens a lot, trust me.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, at some point it's money related.
Yes.
The perpetrator will do whatever they do, and then later they would promise the victim that I'll give you this much, so go and drop charges. So because of, I think, background of many black people, they end up dropping charges. At some point it would involve the elders, talk things through, and then later they would come back and say, "We've fixed things, our elders from both families have come together and discuss the whole thing, and then we just want to drop the charges and leave it as it is."
You spoke about background. Let's speak about your sister's background. I mean, you didn't grow up as a girl. You're the brother. But were you privy? Did you see in you guys growing up as kids, like a way in which she was taught to know that she's successful if she has a man? Because we raised like that. Like, once you get a man, you'll be fine. Is that the environment that she grew up in?
No.
No.
Not at all.
So there wasn't a how
We did not even discuss with our parents or our elders the relationship stories. You understand? As black people, it's not easy for you to discuss certain things with your elders.
Yeah.
Unlike other maybe races, for a lack of a better word. You understand? So that was not the teaching at all.
And when you got married and the elders are giving advice into, being a husband, what was the message to you as a man who's now embarking on being a husband?
Yeah, well, they will always tell you to protect your family, to take care of your family, to provide. You understand? Make sure that they do not feel like they took a wrong decision by getting married to you in particular. So yeah, those were some of the teachings that you get taught by the elders. More especially during that, it's more like a counseling, marriage counseling from home. Yeah, unlike these professional ones that we get these days.
Okay, before I let you go, any words of advice that you have, to women who are watching this and they're currently in an abusive relationship, much like your sister was in, and now, she lost her life, sadly. What are you saying to women?
It's quite difficult because when we at work, we always tell them every day, we always advise them, please speak up. Do not keep quiet. But because when people are in love, they are totally in a different world. You cannot tell them what to do. As much as you try to tell them professionally or maybe from a personal level, advise them as to what to do, it's difficult to advise somebody who's in love. Trust me, it is. But then they should. I would encourage, even with men, there are men who are being abused in relationships, but then they don't speak up. It's not easy, more especially when you are a male and then you go to the police station or maybe the social workers. Yeah, they laugh at you. Yeah. It's not nice, but I encourage people to do it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you very much for your time. Thank you to Phamatso for sharing his story. Hopefully, it'll change somebody's life. After the break, we talk more on relationships, toxic masculinities, and how we as women can learn self-love, self-appreciate, so we don't find ourselves in these situations. Stay tuned. and you're watching Real Talk on SABC3. If you've just tuned in, we're challenging toxic masculinities, the idea that demands men to man up, to be strong, physically strong all the time, not to express their emotions, be sexually dominant in relationships. Women are their possession. Be the head of the family and be the keeper of the property. Author of controversial book Shattered Innocence, Jackie Phamatso. Phamatso, am I saying it right? Phamatso, there we go. Is back with another book entitled Mpye, which aims to create debate around the dangers of young women getting involved in these romantic relationships. Her first book, titled Shattered Innocence, which opened a can of worms for a lot of South African big shots, all under the umbrella of the booming sugar daddy lifestyle trend. Now Jackie comes back with a jaw-dropping book titled Mpye, The Blesser's Game. She's joined by a man who needs no introduction, a social commentator on men's issues, editor and publisher of notedman.com, Siphiwe Mpye. Welcome so much to my show. Now, I want to talk to you. No, there's no laughing matter. I know, like, I think you chuckle when you're nervous, and I do that as well.
Yeah.
You dedicated the book to Karabo Mokoena, right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Whew. Well, she's not the only one, but, well, at that point in time, I felt like her relationship brought light to a lot of conversation. Yeah. And the way she died was deeply questionable, you know? And I felt like if we forget the other girls that died way before her,
or who weren't as
publicized as her, it'll be injustice to all women or all young women. Because so many women die from relationships that go wrong, or they get kidnapped, or they commit suicide because of relationships, or they just disappear. And I mean, in Scientin, how many girls have you ever heard of them going to live with partners and they never come back? You know, there's dockets that are opened of missing girls day in and day out. And Karabo was one of those people that I felt, you know what, if he had chosen differently, we would be talking a different story. And I didn't want to say she chose the life she did as much as she did, but it could have not really all ended that well. It could have been prevented.
Siphiwe, is it, if you are a 38-year-old man, is it too late to change your mind about things?
Sometimes I think so. You know, when I speak to 38-year-old men, I feel that, you know, I think our only chance is the younger generation. Because even those of us who are around about that age, who are aware of these things and who do take time to do the work, because it's a lot of work to unlearn all of these things, you know, we still get it wrong, you know. I think it's Teju Cole who says something, I'm paraphrasing, something around the fact that even, you know, the best of us men, even the feminists among us, still swim merrily in this advantage, you know, that, or this privilege that being a man in the world that we live in provides. And, you know, so when I do speak to my peers, it's very clear that there's a, you know, and this topic can get a bit exhausting, you know.
It can.
Being in this space, being in this,
exactly,
being in the space that I'm in, you know, I find that I'm having this conversation over and over again, whether it's in private spaces or in public spaces. And sometimes it gets exhausting. Sometimes you feel like you're a stuck record. And sometimes you feel maybe you're preaching to the converted. And then you turn on the radio in the morning and you hear a caller, you know, or you go onto Facebook and you see some of the ignorant comments that will come from, you know, from men in general, actually, you know, kind of across the spectrum in ages. So sometimes it can feel like it's irreparable. You know, we're talking about toxic masculinities, for example. You know, I've been reading recently that actually the idea of masculinity in itself is the toxic thing, not just toxic masculinities, but exactly, masculinity is the problem.
So you did a lot of research, you know, going to this book, and you speak to women, and I find the reason they'll go missing, or the reason we'll end up dead, is because we don't speak out even to our friends, so that our friends know what's going on. What did you find, and I'm pretty sure it's difficult to have found this information, but you have a little bit of it. What did you find is the reason that women will stay in these relationships?
Number one is the shame that comes with the relationship itself. Because going into a relationship with an older person or a person who has more power than you, whether it's money or work position, or they have taken you from Ekaya and then they brought you to Joburg, now you live in this apartment, and now you have told your family and you have posted it everywhere. Now, going back to the fact that you need to go back home, now this relationship is about to be terminated, you just don't want to say anything. You would rather hold on to these positions as much as you can. I mean, I went to Northwest about 8-9 months ago just to find a conclusion to why I felt that if women were more educated, they will be more liberated, you know. So I found a lady, she had been living with a man for about 7 years, since the age of 18. And she had booked herself into a mental institution instead of going home, so that people still think she's with this man when she's actually homeless.
Oh, wow.
So she didn't want to go home because of the shame that came out of going back home.
You can't keep a man.
You can't keep a man.
Like as if a man is like meant to be kept. Like, why is it my job to keep him? Like,
she opted to actually book herself into a mental institution, of which the man was still paying for, you know, paying for the hospital. But the bottom line was that she didn't want to go home.
There's something you always say, and I find it to be profound, albeit difficult, but very profound, is the fact that you find that you have to police your own friends, right? So when you say you're going to give talks, and you give talks to men, you know, about, you know, where you guys are and how in which direction you should be growing, do you find it's more difficult to call out your own friends?
It is. It is because of how those conversations are framed, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to go outside of that framing, you're ostracized, you're being too serious, Siphiwe is being Siphiwe again, all of those things. So it's difficult, and it's difficult to, sometimes you find, which I don't like doing, but you have to pick your battles, you know. You're now kind of stepping back and trying to find the right timing, trying to... Because
at a braai and we watching rugby, where now you want to be a feminist. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you know, it only, that process is easier when you recruit one or two of the group, and then it's a third one, and then you see someone sending you a link about something that they've just read that they find profound, and you think, 2 months ago, this person wasn't thinking like this. You know, part of the work I do is running a storytelling initiative called Imbaula, and recent one we did was working through with the Soul City Institute around gender-based violence, and we did a show around that. And there was a man there who was an ex-taxi driver who, you know, became an owner and a businessman, but was also in the arts. But he, you know, we wanted to get his perspective about the toxic masculinities in the taxi industry. And we did a workshop with him, and it was just him and myself who were the men in a room full of women, a room full of feminist women. It was a rough room for him, right? Because he had to tell his story and from his perspective. And there were so many things that were new to him. There were so many things that were shocking, so many things that were surprising, so many things that he said that probably usually, you know, in jest, that probably get, you know, a good reception, a lot of laughter. But in that room, they didn't get laughter, you know. So 3 weeks before the show, he had to go away and rethink his entire story, rethink his entire approach to life, you know. And 3 weeks later, when he told his story, there was a different man there. Yes, he wasn't transformed in 3 weeks. We can't do that. But he started thinking differently. And I think that is the big problem with unlearning, is trying to get past this barrier that we are all constrained by this barrier. Masculinity or toxic masculinities affect all of us, men and women, right? Because women are indoctrinated in a certain way, men are indoctrinated in a certain way, and it all feeds into the one thing, the patriarchy.
The reason there is that masculinity is because we're allowing it as women. And that's how we're raised, and that's how we're taught that, you know. But for you, I want to ask, what happens, is there a situation where there's a healthy level of having a sugar daddy? Like, I'm enjoying it, he's enjoying it, he's paying me stuff, I'm sitting at home, I'm pretty. You know what I'm saying? It can't all be bad, surely.
No, it's not really. I mean, in the beginning, it's really nice.
In the beginning?
In the beginning. So there's a time limit to this thing. You know, in the beginning, it's really nice. But that's when I say to young women, should you, not that we're condoning it, but should you be in that position, back it up while you're still there. You know, save as much as you can. Pay for your school fees, pay your debts as quick as possible. Because as soon as that carpet is pulled out of your feet, it's turmoil, you're just going down.
So there's no exception?
There's no exception because, no. No, it's like a goud train. It starts very quickly and it stops very quickly as well. So
okay, that's funny. I don't know, like, isn't there, like, for me, I always feel like there's an exception to everything, right? And it's the people inside the situation that make it the exception. Am I wrong?
Maybe, you know, and I think the exceptions are so few and far between that, you know, and I mean, I wanted to go back to something that Jackie was saying. I mean, you know, no disrespect to her and what she was saying, but, you know, it was very striking for me, and it's very indicative of where we live or the moment we're in. When she was talking about part of, you know, what she's trying to attain with the book is helping young girls make different choices or better choices, you know. And it's sad for me that, you know, even in our rape crisis, it's women who are constantly being told, don't wear this. What were you doing there?
What are you saying to me?
And it's the men that are kind of just chilling on the sidelines, and no one is, you know, no one is asking these blessers, for example.
It's 100
like,
women
why,
raped
you
this
know,
year,
exactly.
not 100 men raped this
exactly.
year.
But which brings me back to going back to the process of getting a blesser, you know, or a man being a blesser. Because look at our fathers. They come from a position where they were abused themselves within their political realms or the schools that they went to at the time or how they grew up. So I could not, my parent will not justify how I grow up now because it's two different generations. They can't educate me on how I live now because they know nothing about social media. They know nothing about how older men treat women in working environments, you know. So you find a young girl who comes from a rural Kwakwa that comes to Johannesburg and talks to their mother about Instagram, the pressures of social media, the pressures of having an iPhone, the pressures of staying in an apartment that looks like they would not understand what you say.
Okay, hold that thought, both of you. We have to go to an ad break, but this conversation is far from over. We'll continue right after this. It's the final leg of the show, and I want to now talk about this phrase that you are taught as a little girl, and it kind of haunts you until you die, really. Men will be men. Why, Siphiwe, with you first, why is that phrase dangerous?
It's dangerous because it defines, I suppose it defines this dangerous idea of what masculinity or what being male is about. And it sets you up for life. And, you know, from the time you then leave your home, if you're told that in the home, everything around you reinforces it. So you go to school, you know, blue is for boys, pink is for girls. You go to church. For many years, girls couldn't be altar girls, or you know. And you know, everywhere you go, you know, you grow up, you go into varsity. All of it is reinforced over and over again.
All it does is like kind of excuse bad behavior from men, because boys will be boys and then it becomes men will be men, right? Do you not feel that that's why we are in a culture that you write about, the blesser culture, that those are men like pretty things, men like to have things, men like to have possessions, and they like to own their woman, therefore men will be men. Is that not what you're fighting when you write of this?
It's exactly that, because we sort of condone bad behavior by telling them, you can actually do this because it's in your nature. You know, instead of saying, no, actually, you can't do this. It's traumatizing to the next person. It's hurting the next generation. We cannot allow such behavior to be condoned over time and still say, no, it's within their nature. It's not within their nature. You know, you can change DNA. As soon as a child is born, you teach them differently. You know, you educate them differently. You show them how to treat people differently, so they grow with a different perception. So we cannot say it's been done over and over, let's continue with it into the next generation. Then what are we left with? Broken men.
Kofi, how do you get men to read your book? Because I know from today, a lot of men are going to want to read it, right? But how do you get men to read your book? Because I think it should be read by both sides.
I don't really try to get men to read the book. I think a lot of the time men approach me based on the title of the book, and they have an initial impression about it, and they want to set some things straight. So when we start having the conversation, it then becomes a case of, all right, cool, like let me read it and make my own mind up about it. I find that a lot of guys are actually quite receptive to what I say in the book. I think a lot of guys are also quite jaded by their experiences, and that's no excuse. It really is no excuse. But a lot of guys that I've encountered also want to change because they know that they can do better.
So you're nodding at that a lot of guys want to change. Do you find that genuinely they do want to change and they do want to, start treating women better, but then what's the toll
Yeah,
gate?
so a lot of us do want to change, but I get a lot of guys, because I have a platform, I have a lot of guys saying, what can we do,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of where that question comes from is about an external thing, right? And most of this work is internal. It's got nothing to do, yeah, it's got nothing to do. Yes, we can go on marches. Yes, we can rant on social media and call each other out and have, joust in that way. But it's an internal process.
Yeah.
It's a process about reading. It's about speaking to the females in your life, whether it's your daughter or your mother or your trans sister, your lesbian cousin, and trying to because it's not binary like that. It's not it's not male, female. It's not black or white. There are a whole lot of crevices in society that you have to, in order for you to be a better man in that sense, you have to get a better view of all of that and how it all intersects.
You said that you did a campaign and it failed dismally. What campaign was this and why did it fail?
The campaign was called Get Involved, and it failed because there were tools that were missing, right? So it was at a certain time when there was a social media frenzy around Anele Boysen, and I was just as outraged as everyone else. But it was, as you were saying in one of your links, it was yet another outrage because there had been one before and there have been others post. So I think the reaction to it wasn't from a thoughtful place. It was from a place of, I'm outraged, I need to do something.
Let's meet for one day,
and
so much, and then let's go back to our houses.
And then there was a whole lot of learning that came after that it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that is consistent. It's something that involves multiple interventions. It's something that involves, but most importantly, I think, an internal journey, not hashtags.
Yeah, not hashtags. You said something earlier about education, is that you find if women would know that if they're just educated, then they would make different decisions.
Yeah.
Like
when
what?
you're educated, you make different decisions because you're more knowledgeable and you open up to better opportunities and you have a sense of
what type of
value.
education are you talking?
It could be just reading. It could be just society. It could be
because not
school.
everyone's going to be afforded a chance to go to school.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But it's also being truthful about your internal journey. If you know what you want and you know your self-worth and you know where you want to go, you can see when something is not for you or when somebody's taking you for a ride. You will have it in your gut that this is just not for me because you have internalized your self-value so much that nobody can take it away from you. Even if they had put a Ferrari in front of your eyes, you would know how to go around it and say, I'm good, I know my journey. So it's about knowing who you are at the end of the day and what you want out of your life. And some education doesn't really come from books, it comes from experiences.
When we started the show, because I was like, okay, there's so many different people coming, so Kofi's coming, and Jack is coming, and Siphiwe's coming, what's the common thread? And you hit it, and then I realized that everyone has touched on it, that this is all internal. And if you kind of fix yourself, where you can't be taken for a ride and you can't be abused, then no man can abuse you. And if you're a guy who's abusive and you fix yourself, then you're going to be that guy who's one less abuser in the country. And this is what I want to leave you with this afternoon. Here is that it's an internal journey, okay? You simply have to fix yourself. And men, fix yourself and then start calling each other out. Like I say, women are not gonna tell men to stop raping. Men are gonna tell men to stop raping and stop abusing. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been absolutely wonderful. I hope you've been enlightened in a certain way. Tomorrow, if you're a Soapy fan, you don't want to miss out. Born the Beautiful in the house. She is Brooke Logan's sister, Katie Logan. Her name is Heather Tom, and she's going to be in here. Make sure you join us. Goodbye.